Hey everyone, it's Miss Freeman. Today I wanted to try to do First Chapter Friday in slightly different format. So instead of being a video of me reading, I want to show you the pages as I read so that you can get an idea of how the book looks, what the font looks like. I know for some of you that's really important, and it's important for me that you're finding books that you love. So I want you to be able to read along with me instead of just watching me read. I feel kind of awkward doing that anyway, so I thought this would be a nice way to fix some of those problems. So as I read, you'll see the pages. I'm not good at scanning them yet, so you'll notice that right now they're a little bit funky, but as we go along with our First Chapter Fridays, I hope I get better and better at scanning so that you can see all of the words on the pages. But don't worry, I won't leave any words out. I will still read everything, even though they are not full pages in the scan. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this book. It's called Shadow in the Dark, and it's book 1 of the Harwood Mysteries. Now, there aren't any other books out in this series yet because this book was published this year. It's brand new, which is exciting. As you open the book, you'll see a table of contents like any other book. Then you'll see this awesome instructional manual called How to Read Historical Fiction. You can pause it now and read it if you'd like. The next page has a map. I love books with maps because it allows me to see what I'm reading, and it gives it more of a realistic feel. Because I don't know, it's kind of cool to see a map of what you're reading and how you would get around instead of just seeing it in your mind's eye, because I don't have a very good sense of direction, so it helps me out quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and get started reading. You can pause and rewind at any time. You can comment below with any questions you have about the book. If you do enjoy the first chapter of this book, please let me know, and I'd be happy to give it to you so you can read the whole thing. I'm going to get started now. I hope you enjoy it. So the first chapter is called Tragedy. The boy jolted awake to a thunderous drumming. He rolled off his straw mattress. The dirt floor trembled beneath his toes, almost tickling them. Da-doom, da-doom, da-doom. Father? Mother? Vapor puffed from his mouth in the dim light. Dawn must be near. Across the cottage, Father sprang to his feet, his thick hair jutting out in all directions. Listen! Horses! He pulled a brown tunic over his head as Mother stirred next to him. The boy grabbed his own tunic, sticking his arms into its scratchy woolen holes. Then he slipped on a pair of thin leather shoes. Father might need his help. Hoots and curses and screams rang out from the far side of the village, a chaotic mix of angry shouts and terrified cries. Hardenbury Manor must be under attack. Mother clung to Father's hand, her eyes wide with fear. What do we do, Nicholas? Stay here. Father bolted out the crooked wooden door, letting in a rush of misty air. Bitter smoke stuck to the boy's tongue, not the pleasant smell of the earth where Mother heated their broth each morning. Nay, it was foul smoke, worse than the stench of fire that had burned the crops in the west field last year. Mother sunk her face into her hands. Don't worry, the boy hugged her tight. God will protect us. Son! Father's voice called from outside. Coming, Father! He squeezed Mother's hand and burst out the flimsy door. A surge of heat slapped his face as flames sprang up from the thatched roof of a nearby cottage. The manor house on the hill was burning too. Dark clouds of smoke poured from the windows on its high stony walls, like rows of filthy chimneys staining the red sky of dawn. Villagers scurried about in all directions, but 6 burly men had gathered to defend Hardenbury with their tools, hoes, shovels, and long scythe blades for the wheat harvest. Father stood among the defenders, taller than the rest. His shoulders were squared, and his eyes glistened in the firelight. Maybe Father wanted him to join the battle. I'm here, Father. Nay, take your mother and run, son, Father yelled. 'Tis bandits! Just then, the village blacksmith sprinted down the lane toward them, his huge hands balled into fist, pumping back and forth. A bandit dressed in black pursued him on a sweaty horse. Dust swirled into the smoky air with each strike of a hoof. The horseman held a long wooden mace crowned with metal studs. He bore a jagged scar on his cheek, and his thick, crooked nose looked as though it had been broken and never healed. He kicked the blacksmith to the dirt, then swung the mace and hit the poor man's head with a bone-cracking blow. Get ready, men, Father said. He waved his son off. Not you. The boy shook his head hard. He would never run and leave Father to fight alone. He might only be 11 years old, but he'd worked in the fields with Father each day and cleaned the tools with Father each night. He was old enough to fight bandits with Father, too. 5 men on horseback rode up in a cloud of dust, joining the scarred bandit. They circled the defenders, penning the boy out. A few of them carried crossbows fitted with sharp quarrels. He couldn't get to Father without fighting through them. More bandits were headed this way, too, judging by the sound of it. What do we do with this bunch, Rummy? A pig-eyed bandit asked the man with the scar. Rummy lifted the bloody mace in his fist and peered down at Father and the others. Drop your weapons now, or we kill you all. The boy reached to the ground and picked up a stone. A short, thin bandit sat upon a brown horse nearby. If he could hit that bandit with a stone, it might create an opening, and he could run to help Father inside the circle where the extra shovel lay on the dirt. As the boy took aim, a child cried out in terror from the cottage across the path. The voice of little Alden, only 6 years old. The child's cottage was on fire. Alden's father was standing with the other men, and his mother and sister had died last year in the plague. That meant that Alden was all alone as the flames on the roof rose higher. There was no one close enough to help the child. The boy dropped his stone on the path. I'll be right back, Father. He ran to the burning cottage. Alden was pulling desperately on the jammed door. Stand back, Alden. He kicked the door hard with his heel, splintering its frame. Shards of wood hung limply as the door fell to the dirt. The child raced out, his face streaked with mud and tears. Alden, run to the east field, he said. Someone will get you soon. The child nodded and ran toward the east field. The boy headed back to Father and the others, who were holding their tools high toward the bandits, ready for battle. We will never give in to you, Father told Rummy. The others shouted in agreement. As you wish, Rummy said. He gestured to his men. Kill them. The boy picked up the stone again. He needed to be at Father's side for this battle, but his delay in helping Alden had stolen his only chance. Halt! A tall bandit commanded, entering the circle from the lane on horseback. This one seemed to be their leader. He wore a chainmail shirt, and his face was lined with deep, curved creases that faded into a silver beard on a pointed chin. A pendant hung around his neck on a thin rope, a carved wooden star, and, at its center, a dragon with jewel green eyes. Carlo, Rummy drew his horse aside. We were just taking care of these troublemakers. Carlo groaned. I'm weary of your needless killing, he said. His voice almost sounded sad. Ugh, you're getting too old for this. Rummy spit on the dirt. Leave the killing to me. The boy shifted his arm and took aim at Rummy, who would be the greatest threat to Father. Carlo sat up in his saddle and grabbed the hilt of his broad iron sword. He thrust it towards Rummy's throat. The boy might not need to hit Rummy after all. Carlo held the sword higher and pointed it toward the manor house, still burning on the hill. Our mission is done. Why are you wasting time on these peasants? Rummy laughed. The men are excited. They want a little fun. Carlo scowled at him under his wrinkled brow. You set fire to the whole village. What does it matter? Rummy said. Can you not follow simple orders? Carlo pulled the reins on his horse and rode slowly from the circle. Now gather the men and follow me. The village might not be saved. After all, there would be fires to put out and injuries to heal, but the bandits' attack would soon be over. But as soon as Carlo had left the circle, Rummy stared down at Father, who still held tightly to his shovel, his eyes defiant. I will at least teach this one a lesson. Rummy raised his mace into the air. With it, he could crush Father's head, as he'd done to that poor blacksmith. Nay! The boy threw the stone with all his might. It struck Rummy in the center of his ugly nose, sending him flying off his saddle to the dirt with a thud and a grunt. The boy cheered, along with some villagers. Even a few of the bandits laughed as Rummy rolled to his feet with mud stuck to the top of his nose. Suddenly, the boy's face grew cold. Rummy was charging at him, waving his mace with wild eyes that streamed with furious tears. You will die for that, boy! Run! Father yelled, as the other bandits closed rank around the defenders. He ran. He raced down the side lane that led to the east field, glancing back only once. Rummy was gaining on him. He passed cottages on both sides, many of them still burning. No one was around. Maybe they'd fled, or the bandits might have killed them all. He chanced another look. Rummy was nearly upon him, cursing and spitting as he came. Finally, he reached the east field, where a few rows of golden wheat stalks remained standing in the midst of a harvest. A wood bucket hung from a post, drinking water for the field laborers. He grabbed hold of the bucket and swung it behind him. He released it. Ah! He looked back. Rummy, drenched with water, had stumbled over the bucket. Now there'd be a chance to put some distance between them. He crossed the field and headed toward the thick trees. That would be his only hope for escape. If he could go to the woodland trail, he could outrun the tiring bandit in the forest. Then what? The trail would lead him to Harwood Abbey. The monks there might protect him, or at least send word to King Henry that bandits were raiding the countryside. Then he could circle back home and help Mother and Father with the repairs. "Stop!" Rummy shouted behind him. Why wouldn't the bandit give up the chase? That stone must have hurt more than just his nose. His reputation with the other bandits might be at risk. They'd laughed at him. The boy kept running. He could work the fields for hours at a time without a break under the glare of the withering sun. Surely he could run half an hour to save his life. Yet, after a while, the green branches passed more slowly, some scratching at his arms as the trail narrowed. Rummy's curses followed him. "You cannot run forever!" The bandit must be near exhaustion by now. The trail opened to its widest point with a clear path to Harwood Abbey. His woolen tunic clung to the sweat on his back despite the frosty morning air. Pain in his side, cramping muscles, pleading for a break. Nay, Rummy was still pursuing. Suddenly, his foot hit something, and he plunged to the dirt with a yelp. The tree's thick root, stretching across the trail, shouldn't have surprised him. He'd bounded over roots like that before, pretending they were serpents waiting to strike his heel. "Get up, you simpkin," he said to himself, brushing a wet flop of hair from his forehead. Blood seeped from scrapes on his knees and palms, yet he pressed his hands to the dirt. Rummy sprang upon him from between two trees, tackling him back to the ground. The bandit seized his ankle. He couldn't get back on his feet now. He kicked and hollered, but Rummy's icy grip seemed unbreakable. "Now die, boy!" "Lord, save me!" Rummy growled and raised the mace high to strike him. Darkness. Then, out of darkness came piercing, bright light, just for a moment. Dizziness. Darkness again. Rough arms under his legs and around his back, bobbing back and forth. He opened his eyes, but the light punished him, jabbing behind his brow with daggers. Whoever carried him was dressed all in black. Nausea in the pit of his stomach. Darkness again. How much time had gone by? Someone still carried him. He chanced another painful glance. No more. It hurt too much. Whoever held him was wearing a black robe, carrying a long, thin pole. Dizziness. Nausea. Everything swirling in darkness. Black robe? Maybe this was the angel of death coming to take him to the netherworld. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a wrenching sound came. Only a wrenching sound, and vomit came out. Then a long darkness.